let's look at what is left on our agenda, because what I don't want to do is have everybody in here, kick everyone out for executive session, and then try to pull everybody back in for 5 minutes at the end. That would be rude. Are we streaming? Fantastic. Okay, so the next thing that we have is the Affiliate Support Committee report. We've already done announcements. We've got an IALP update. And then executive session is recommended for portions of the following items. Is there anything that's recommended through under overview and budget process that is not going to need to be done in executive session? Where is, Lainey, do you have any recommendations? So I'm looking at the second page of the agenda.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, with respect to changing things around.
Is there anything that is not going to be done in executive session?
Oh,
There's no right or wrong answer.
so sorry, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm doing this from memory. So we'll definitely want to talk about talent in executive session. And I would recommend tools as well. And then I would refer to our other two committees, how to handle that. But the opener and the closer will do outside of executive session too, I believe.
Okay, affiliate support and candidate support. Do you have budget presentations prepared?
No, this is strictly a
Gotcha.
conversation about.
Okay. Okay, that may not be very long then. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna stick with how we've got it right now, which is affiliate support committee and then IALP update. At that point, we're probably gonna move to go into executive session, and it may not take as long as we had anticipated. So you may not all have to suffer in hallway. So let's, Mr. Pat Ford, are you ready?
I am.
Oh, just kidding. Just kidding, you're not ready. I screwed you over. Ah, it happens. Tap dance.
Maybe unplugging it and plugging it back in again.
Three cheers for PowerPoint.
Ken.
Oh, we have something. Almost.
They extended it instead of married. Function as a.
Yes, like mirrors.
Ken should have a tip
Hold on,
jar.
I got it. I can do right.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, Pat Ford.
First of all, before I get into the presentation, for those of you at home who haven't met me, my name is Pat Ford. I am chair of the Libertarian National Committee Affiliate Support Committee. I'm also the Region 8 rep, and I've served as state chair on more than one occasion. That's important because we're going to be talking about today the fundamental relationship between affiliates and the national party, an area of critical importance. So having lived all sides of this and having a great team, I think we can do a deep dive. I also wanted to, if you will, introduce two recurrent concepts that you're going to hear from for the rest of the year and a half or so that we're all together. The Affiliate Support Committee serves as a conduit for the needs of the affiliates to the Libertarian Party professional staff management. None of the concepts I'm going to discuss today or move forward, all right? I think we have the wrong PowerPoint up. Okay. Are meant to interject ourselves into any of the lanes, if you will, of the professional staff. Again, the critical point is we're a conduit. The success of all of this depends on something that I believe is the single biggest challenge of the liberty movement. And that's what I call injecting the volunteer gene into the libertarian DNA. I have seen, just in my brief tenure across the nation, great efforts that have been applauded, embraced, and not really well supported by membership at large, membership writ large. And when we think about all the great reports we've heard from our staff, our committees over the last few days, there's been a single common denominator when you talk about ballot access, needing more volunteer, not paid, volunteer ballot access volunteers. When we hear about, political activism, what do we hear? The need for volunteers. When we hear about some great events being put out by hardworking staff and out of the affiliates, if you will, state affiliates, being underattended, what's missing? Volunteers. So we need to address that, and we can do it positively. And part of that comes from, as Laney discussed, creating events that speak to the measured responses of our membership and taking these events and tailoring them to them. Where the affiliate support committee comes in is in support of the professional staff, amplifying those efforts and also helping to redirect back, if you will, exactly how folks are feeling out in the sticks, out in the boonies, out in the big cities about what the Libertarian Party is. So I really wanted to stress that. We've changed the way the committee operates. I believe this to be one of the most important committees in the party. And we've changed the way it operates. In the past, it's largely been a very static, single project, single group oriented approach. We've broken down the Libertarian Party Affiliate Support Committee into really 3 working groups, 3 virtual groups. All 3 will be represented today very briefly and discussing and updating you on exactly what we're doing. I'll be addressing the Affiliate Support Hub with Annette Gabbard. We'll be talking about, if you will, college affiliate programs. And then I think Andrew's going to fill in for Rob Howard, who obviously couldn't be here today, got an election in 2 days, on the affiliate in a box issue. So, and then we'll open up the questions at the very end. The Affiliate Support Committee Hub. The concept here is reinventing the Affiliate Support Committee into the Affiliate Support Committee Hub to serve as literally a customer service center for Libertarian affiliates. The creation of a Libertarian rapid response team. Now let's think about that for a second. How many times have we watched the news cycle and events swing by us, sometimes at a frighteningly rapid pace, and not be able to respond instantly because we're trying to figure out who's going to respond. We're trying to figure out how we're going to respond. You're going to hear me talk about the jukebox theory. Everyone boomer here, or boomer like me, remembers jukeboxes. And what it simply means is if someone goes to pushes A12 on a button, you have a button, all right, and a particular record to play back.
A record.
Right, a record. All right.
Buttons and records.
Buttons and records, yeah. But the point being is that if we've got a humanitarian crisis, no one's having midnight phone calls to figure out who, how, and where to respond. We've got a preordained, predefined response in place, and that's just a question of who we're calling, who's already aware of that response, to put it into motion. It could be a political crisis, scandal, shocking. Imagine a political scandal with the Libertarian movement. Yeah, that's never happened, right? The genesis of the idea is very straightforward. In 2021, James Toller, then vice chair of the Libertarian Party of Kentucky, Ken Moulman and myself, among others, fashioned an on-the-spot response to the devastating tornadoes in western Kentucky. In theory, the execution was simple but effective. A single point of contact at the disaster site was established, eliminating time-wasting efforts to repeat and define the call to action. Communication emanated from national to affiliates on how to support relief efforts already in place, both in cash and material donations. Significant quantities of life basics were donated en masse by libertarians across the country by order and paying for them online. At Walmart, in that case, we picked up at a specific location where Mr. Toller and other volunteers were waiting to load them on a waiting tractor trailer. In reality, while Mr. Toller's efforts were smoothly executed, the surrounding marketing and communication managed to come together in some sort of awkward dance. But an important lesson was learned about both the heart and the size of the libertarian community. What could we accomplish? On a fundamental level, a response to a humanitarian crisis that allows us to engage in the type of humanitarian aid that personifies the replacement of government intervention with personal charity, or are bound to soon happen political event. The exclusion of a serious, legitimate libertarian candidate from a prominent forum or debate, a fast-approaching ballot access deadline where volunteer help from the affected or neighboring affiliates is essential to reducing aid petitioning efforts. In the case of the Libertarian Party, all of these events crisis share one common denominator: the absence at any time of any built-in process to provide a rapid response that can facilitate a win in the following key areas: humanitarian response, outreach, membership, ballot access, and of course, most importantly, for sometimes fundraising. We need to begin to utilize the economies of scale that exist in the Libertarian National Party infrastructure to leverage our membership and significant social media presence in the aggregate to support those goals. How do we do this? Pretty happy. Maintain a database of affiliate shares and a local, depending on the size and quite frankly, the willingness of the volunteer base, to have local folks in place, maybe communication directors, fundraising folks, outreach, political directorships, ballot access coordinators. Working relationships are developed so that there exists a dual flow of communications. Let's talk about that. How important is it for folks who are the leadership of the Libertarian Party to have some connection, real connection, to folks out in the respective regions? So that it's not, oh, those guys at the gals at the LNC, oh, it's not that bleepity bleep, oh, it's not that. Instead of becoming a title, we become individuals. You know, it's Rich, who's helping run the convention. It's Pat who's there. It's Karen Library who's there. But it's the rest of us who actually understand who we're working with in the field. So creating a channel within the National Libertarian Party for communications tools, legal support, volunteers, whatever is necessary to flow back to the affiliate level quickly when they raise up to us their demands. It's the opportunity to use the social media of the Libertarian National Party, followed, quite frankly, potentially by an ask of national affiliates, amplified by sharing, liking, retweeting, can dramatically impact the chances for success for any given action. Every one of us knows someone who's been excluded unfairly from the debate stage. Imagine instead of a last-minute sort of fumbling approach to figure out who the station manager is at some local station, only to be met by some gatekeeper. Imagine, if you will, if hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of libertarians bombard that media outlet or that media headquarters with a single, polite, but firmly worded message that the Libertarian Party represents freedom, which is the bedrock of our society, and we have earned a right to be on that stage by being the third largest national political party, arguably on the planet. You know, the goal is to eliminate the fumbling efforts to figure out who to reach at each affiliate, the constant reinvention process as each crisis du jour is encountered. The takeaway: waiting for a board member to report anecdotally on a humanitarian crisis, finding out about debate access the day before, missing an important ballot access deadline is an unprofessional and thoroughly inadequate manner to respond to political and humanitarian events, particularly in the presence of an on-steroids news circle. Established process will allow the LP to more nimbly, more effectively leverage our, for the time being, challenged resources. So I'm reaching out to all of you to talk about just briefly a couple of these areas. You've got the state affiliates reaching out individually with preordained, pre-established contacts to the affiliate support committee. Now again, I want to stress, we've got development information, technology, communications, ballot access, candidate support. In between that will be the professional management, the executive director of the National Party, who will then, based on, again, established communication channels, not hurried phone calls in the middle, right? But we receive forwarded email with what's necessary, what's needed. And at that point, they will decide at the national level what resources they can bring to bear, and then shoot them back down to the affiliate support committee, who, for example, in the case, I'm going to use a very specific example, our response to Hurricane Florida hurricane. An astonishing range of quick social media response from our social media team, back out, generating traffic, again, with a specific response that folks around the country can respond to. We learned a lot, by the way. That was our first implementation of this. We did do a postmortem. We realized that there are, a lot of areas for improvement. But again, if ballot access can help us direct efforts, and I'll use New York as a positive example and a negative example. As a positive example, we had folks from Vermont, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts do ballot access in New York as volunteers. We didn't make the total, but imagine if a year or two from now, when this is in full flesh, fully created, we can have hundreds of volunteers descend on California, New York, all of the areas that we find constant challenges in. Imagine if we could do that, and both the camaraderie, the spirit, and the effectiveness and the cost effectiveness of our ballot access is now being supported by engaged, well-organized members. We all need to remember, I'm as former state chair, I've been just as guilty of this. We all need to understand that, particularly those folks who are willing to be volunteers, we need to plan and organize and make the best use of their time, just out of simple respect to that. We all know that doesn't always happen, sometimes because of chaos, sometimes because of how thinly staffed we are in certain parts of the country. But this has the opportunity to simply make it better, so that volunteers are responding to a couple of focal points. They don't need to call anybody, they don't need to talk to anybody. Show up here, if you can show up there, great. I'll put you to work for 3 hours. I would argue if we had had something like this in place for New York, there's a much better chance that we would have received ballot access in New York. And imagine the amount of money, time, and effort we would have seen. So that's step one. That's going to take us, our team, a great team, the next year and a half to actually put it into place and product. It's all voluntary. If affiliates don't want to participate, no worries. But whether it be another hurricane, a series of tornadoes, whether it be a scandal, whether it be the sudden realization that we're a few thousand signatures short, we need a structured approach to channel our energies so that we can both respect our members, show them a real value add from national, and at the same time accomplish great things. So that is the first part of our presentation here. Again, I'll take questions at the very end. I want to make this point clear to folks who might be listening at home or watching this, or maybe watching in the coming days. If questions or issues, you want to volunteer, my name is Pat Ford. You can find me on the Boomer Facebook. You can find me virtually anywhere. The Region 8 page, the LNC. Reach out to me, volunteer, engage, give us ideas, constructive criticism. I want to hear from people because this is, in fact, all about the affiliates. So with that, I'm going to introduce Lynn Gabbard, and she's going to talk about, I think, an outstanding opportunity for young libertarians, for us to finally add that kind of outreach into, the 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that we've so sorely needed, not depending on other political organizations to funnel them to us, but to us reaching out and, making that connection early on. Thank you.
Okay. I am Linnea Gabbard, Region 7 Rep, and also on the Affiliate Support Committee. I'm going to start this off with quoting something Lainey said in her staff report. We need to look across projects to plan ahead and feature the ones that can make the biggest impact at the right time. That really hit me, and I feel like this is very relevant. So, college libertarians, party. Those are the people we need. So, while we definitely encourage state affiliates, I know they exist, who do have relationships with like Yale or Students for Liberty to continue to coalesce. Not all of the states in our party are able to do that because we don't have the relationships. I also know that, some states do have unaffiliated college relationships that they've built. And the reason why I don't think any of those relationships sustain long-term is because none of those organizations have any long-term investment in the Libertarian Party. They're all doing things at a different level that from a different organization. They do not have any buy-in with us. So they don't have the same platform. They don't have the same principles. And I think it's way overdue that we have our own college libertarians and our own system to keep that going. So basically, starting with my story, I crashed into the Affiliate Support Committee wanting to do this. This is something I wanted to do for a long time. I know whenever we started running people for office in my state, I went to some Democrat meetings and some Republican meetings to figure out, I just wanted to see the perspective on how they prepare for elections. And one of the biggest things that they kept mentioning is, did you guys get your, volunteers from the college yet? Have you visited the college? Not to me, but they were talking to themselves. And they have that support, we don't. And those are the ones who volunteer. Those are the people who are willing to, whenever they're not studying, make phone calls or texts. We need that. We are sorely missing that. So me with this idea, I was like, I'm gonna barge in and make some connections. Well, I'm not in college, so that's a problem. A lot of us are not in college. So, while I can, which I did, we created a case study where I went and I tabled UCA. I live in a tri-college town. So I tabled one of them, and it was really successful. And I tabled not just saying, this is a libertarian party, this is what we do. I had a sign-up sheet, and I was like, start a college libertarians chapter. Let's do this locally. And we had a lot of people that did. I got in contact with the student organization member and we talked about that, and it was a good case study. But it was really hard because I'm not in college to keep that going. I don't have any contacts with anybody, in our party that's young and willing to do that. But one day I saw a post from Theodore Gherkin, who is a young libertarian from California, a very, very impressive person, way more impressive than I was at that age. But he just became the chair of the Liberty Youth Caucus. So he was looking to do a college affiliate program too, and I was like, this is amazing. I have someone who can actually do like the footwork, and I can provide whatever resources possible. So I talked to him, and we actually had almost the same proposal project, like what we were going to do at what time. So why this helps us, I think, is we, especially as the LNC, we provide support. We're not. It's good for us to not manhandle and micromanage things that can be done better by people that are intimately involved. So he has this Liberty Youth Caucus going, and I, with him in conjunction, went ahead and decided that I'd be the liaison to this project. So what we're going to do within the next, probably the next 3 months, is we're just going to identify what college organizations exist in what states, what relationships we have. And then he's going to take those and he's going to basically reach out and build it back up. So let me grab really quick. Okay, so a couple things to note. Not only do we need to, the reason why this is important to start now is we're going to have, whenever 2024 comes up, we're going to need presidential help. We're going to need, those elections are the most important to college kids. They love presidential elections because it's exciting. They can connect with people, their age and other states. It's very much where we get a huge volunteer base. And so we have essentially a few things to work out as far as what we want, like how do we want to parent this organization? So we looked at the Republicans and the Democrats, college Democrats. They're basically a direct project of the National Committee. So they would be like, they're like a committee branching off from their, basically, it's a little bit different than like us having a committee from the LNC, but it works a little bit that way. And then you have like the College National Republicans, which are an entirely separate entity. It's not legally bound to the Republican Party itself, but they operate with them and they plan events like that. So that's something that we'll need to decide. However, at this point, what we decided we also wanted to do was make it very much an internal organization for the Liberty Youth Caucus, meaning they want to fundraise as much as they can without asking anything of us, but like maintaining a relationship with the Affiliate Support Committee for resources. Other than that, the first step that we have in our proposal is going to be chapter creation, promotion, maintenance. Like I said, identify suitable colleges. Like there are going to be colleges in the United States that are not going to be as, it's not going to be a hub where we want to start with. Establish a liaison to that project, and then schedule meetings, potential members, reach out to the list of students that we obtain, and then officially establish that college affiliate, and then routine maintenance, just kind of like any other affiliate that you would make. But yes, that is my College of Libertarians project. Yes.
Yeah.
Historically, we're so glad to see somebody excited about this because it's been tried so many times. But one cautionary note, because I'm sure this will come up, and it's a frank discussion to have with the Youth Caucus. In the past, they've engaged in internal politicking, like endorsing LNC candidates and the like. And if they want to just simply be we want to engage youth, that's neutral, that's fine. But if they start wanting to do some of that other stuff, it gets into entanglements with promoting a particular caucus.
I'll speak to it. So I already vetted the whole thing.
Okay.
And I had conversations with Teddy Gherkin before and after he became Youth Caucus chair. So his vision for the Youth Caucus is for it to not be like a typical ideological caucus. It's strictly youth engagement.
Yeah, and that's wonderful because
Yeah.
you need kids, you need them to be the ones to spearhead this. Also, I'd highly encourage you to talk to Dr. Lark because we really haven't had what you want to do yet. He's kind of been the unofficial, when someone wants to start a campus organization, they've been referred to Dr. Larkins, he's a professor, so he knows a little bit about navigating that sort of thing. And I'm sure he would love to be like a faculty advisor. And he did a campus organizing report, but he's always like, oh my goodness, I wish we could do more. So I'm sure Dr. Lark would be very excited to work with you guys, and he's just a gem. They don't call him Gentleman Jim Lark for nothing. I'm sure he would love it.
Absolutely.
So I'm very excited to hear about your project.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what she said, when I talked to Theodore, he was like, he looked at that and said, I want to restructure everything. That way this in the future has nothing to do with, whenever we came together about it, he was first skeptical about it being attached to the LNC. He said, I know we need support and I'd like to form that relationship, but we don't want anything to do with, and I was like, that's great. So I think it'll be very functional, functional on the ground, doing what it's supposed to. I hope so, but that's what we have plans for. So yes, I will reach out to Dr. Long. That'd be great.
I'm also happy to give Teddy some bylaws recommendations about not doing formal endorsements, if that would also make people more comfortable.
It's just a fine line.
I know.
You know that will come up.
It's a
Yeah.
great thing to bring up.
Teddy and I though had like an hour-long conversation about the mechanics of that and how that would work in politicking, that it would have to be a clear division before you guys even.
Because believe it or not, let me give you, it'll sound like an odd example, but when you think about it, you'll be like, oh my goodness, and this would be something for Teddy to consider. There's been ongoing disputes in the party over whether or not LP news should be printed or digital. And in the past, the Youth Caucus has very much lobbied for it to be digital because generally speaking, that's what young people prefer. But then it started into taking a political position because the older people in the party felt like, oh no. So even like something that seems so harmless as that, they have to be so cautious with. So that's just a cautionary tale that blew up into something like 4 years ago. And it still comes up, it seems like every couple of years. But as long as they're super cautious, I think it would work out wonderfully.
There's a couple more questions.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I just had a couple of quick suggestions. When I was chair of Kentucky, we tried to get student organizations up and running. 2 suggestions. Number 1, search our donor database for anyone with a job title of professor or faculty, that kind of stuff, so we can start establishing most of the time these student groups have to have a faculty advisor.
Yes.
So start there. And then we have the things up there, things to do. The last one, maintenance is absolutely critical. And I'll tell you the number of college boards we got set up, and then 3 years later fell down because the person running it graduated and didn't have a successor.
Here we go.
So those are the 2 things I would emphasize based on my experience. I applaud this, it's good, we need to unfortunately, we ceded our previous pipeline to YAL and Students for Liberty, then routed them to the GOP and sent it to us. We need to have our own pipeline into the party. Thank you.
Let me address something about dip and the fall off that I've also spoken with Teddy about. And actually, this involves you in a good way. No, in a good way. So one of the issues with college organizations is that they go dead during the summer.
Yeah.
So something that we want to work with Dustin Blankenship and staff on is to start rolling out an internship program so that the youth caucus can funnel people into our internship program so they can maintain retention and we can get some free work.
And Madam Chair, we try, and I hope this works, because the historical committee, because there's a lot of people who are majoring in history, or they're majoring in some kind of document preservation type thing. The historical committee always wants interns. We've had a few before, and it's been valuable to them, so that would be an awesome thing. I'm sure there's other committees as well. Of course, I'm gonna pimp the historical committee.
Sure.
But it's relevant to a lot of degrees, library science, there's all kinds of degrees that it's relevant to.
So that was one thing we talked about too, before I got in touch with Teddy, is that whenever we did the tabling at UCA, you have to have some kind of incentive for the students, because what they see whenever you just go set up an organization is, oh, I have to do a whole other work and I have a lot of stuff, but there's no reason for me to be doing this other than, so yes, that's primary, like that probably needs to be in the rollout, like, I mean, we can't set all of those things up right away, but for you already kind of have that.
Oh, yeah, we're ready to take on interns at any time.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
So I'm not I'm not intending to dump a smash, like do it all at once internship program on staff right now. So we're not gonna be prepared for summer or for spring, but we might, depending on how things go, we might be able to pull off getting a small group for this summer. We'll see how it goes. We've had one intern so far who worked with Kent, so this has been given a test run. So we're gonna sort of onboard slowly at a pace that they can manage and that they're comfortable with and that won't. We want it to help staff, not be more work for staff. So, but yeah, I think this is looking good. It's looking good.
Any more questions along there? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, we've got 3 working groups within the committee. They all work independently, and then we get together every month or so. The third and final has been a project that's been ongoing for a generation here. And I think we're going to bring that finally to that next level. And a lot of, I want to remark that a lot of folks in the past few years have worked diligently at the affiliate support committee. I think what we're trying to do this time is just bring it up to the next level. So Andrew Watkins is going to fill in for Rob, and just come up and make just a couple brief points, and then again, we respecting the time. I know we've probably got a little over time, but we're going to be opening questions now and tonight. I'll be at the event, so if folks have questions or suggestions. And yes, we need volunteers. I've got places for volunteers everywhere. Andrew, come on.
I'm going to do it here because I don't feel like walking over there.
How libertarian of you.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
The allocate, yeah. So I don't have any fancy slides. But so Rob has been leading the charge on this, but we're kind of starting off small. But basically, what we want to start with, since we want to have like a list of basically job descriptions for volunteers. We were talking a little bit about like stuff for this is what a chair does, this is what a treasurer does. But if we figured out very quickly that if you're like going for that role, you already know what you're doing. So we don't really want to start there yet. But basically, this kind of goes into what Lainey was talking about earlier too. We have a lot of talent coming into the party, and we want to capture that. So basically, it's just what does a social media role do? What does our event coordinator do? This is what we need. So and this soon, within the next couple of weeks, I'll probably be leading on the rest of the region reps to kind of give us a list of point people that kind of stand out. Obviously, everybody works hard and does great stuff, but there's always some outliers that or shining stars, if you will, that kind of thing. That if there's a state or a person that is very good at fundraising, if you can point them to us and we can talk to them, maybe get some brief pointers about what works best for them and what does not, that kind of thing. That way we can compile it all, make it very general and specific, and then each state that wants to view this document can then tailor it to their own needs. And then we'll kind of build from there, basically. But that's pretty much what we're at right now. The question? Anything? No? Suggestions? Wow. All right. Cool.
I'm just going to wrap up. I would be remiss if I didn't make a personal thank you to John Thompson. He's the second vice chair, I should say, at the Libertarian Party of Florida. He was instrumental in our, in our relief efforts there, and he's agreed to be the, if you will, the laboratory, the lab person on this. He's our very first dedicated humanitarian aid coordinator. The goal: have one in every state. There's not only just disaster humanitarian aid, there's political humanitarian aid. You look at the situations in inner cities across the nation with their water supplies. There's an opportunity at every level for Rhode Islanders, Americans, to make a point that if in fact we as an organization, a philosophy of the party, truly believe in substituting government forced aid with voluntary efforts, then we need to be the ones to lead the way, not just in talking about it, but actually doing it. So folks, reach out to me. Lots of opportunity for people to engage. Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is IALP update. Miguel, if you are ready, please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Esteemed LNC colleagues. I had just some brief verbal remarks. I don't have a written report on these matters. I wanted to share updates from an initial phone call that I had with the IALP, that's the International Alliance of Libertarian Parties. Members are comprised of libertarian activists from many different countries around the world. And I was able to have a phone call with 3 gentlemen. It was 4 of us total on the call. And the 3 gentlemen were the president, vice president, and secretary of the IALP. And this was some time ago. It might have been at the last in-person LNC meeting that Angela just sort of tossed it out there that she was looking for someone to help serve as a liaison. And that sounded cool to me, so I let her know I'd be interested. So we set up a phone call. I got briefly acquainted with them and learned that they've not been extremely active in recent months or perhaps recent years. And they're looking to get more active, and they would really appreciate the U.S. Libertarian Party being active internationally with them. And aside from basically some more mundane, I'll say that in the best way possible, more mundane projects like relaunching their website, and certain other things we touched on. They want to help libertarian parties in a few other countries get started up that don't have active libertarian parties yet. The main topic of discussion that I was interested in and that they initiated as well was over messaging, political, messaging around international relations, and particularly Ukraine. And I said, oh, great, that was the main thing I wanted to talk about as well, because we've had a number of LP, or rather libertarians in other countries on Twitter or on social media accusing our US Libertarian Party of echoing, or basically the phrase I'm hearing used is echoing Kremlin propaganda, Russian propaganda, which to me is just laughable. I mean, it's as baseless a claim as if you were to say that libertarians in 2001 were echoing Al-Qaeda propaganda. It's a very misguided view of, if we're going to say, oh, well, the United States caused hundreds of thousands of deaths through our sanctions in Iraq in the 90s, that wouldn't be, Al-Qaeda propaganda, although it did happen to be among the motivations of the terrorists that committed the acts of 9/11. And if we want to shed light on things that NATO and Western countries have done to escalate tensions with Russia, that's not to justify Putin invading Ukraine. So we hashed it out. I just wanted to get into this discussion with them because we have a lot of different folks out there speaking on behalf of the Libertarian Party, and we're not very coordinated in our messaging. And sometimes we really get into the weeds, and we want to argue about things like the Azov Battalion and whether there are or how many Nazis, neo-Nazis, or what have you, there are in the Ukrainian military forces. And we really just get sort of tangled up in these secondary conversations. What I wanted to convey was that the primary conversation should be about how, again, these tensions have been escalated. And I would argue deliberately. We're not seeing peace negotiations. We're seeing escalations of force, we're seeing expansion of Western hegemony and a globalist agenda that, I mean, it's been in our platform for, for forever, that we're against entangling alliances, we're against sanctions, we're against regime change operations, we're against, funding wars and promoting wars. We know that war is a racket, and this Ukraine war is certainly a racket for all the international arms dealers and the U.S. corporations and industry. This is a fantastic opportunity for NATO to expand and to sell lots of weapons and do lots of construction and a lot of financing in Ukraine. And really, so basically, these gentlemen with the IALP, they wanted to see our messaging change to be more, essentially, I would say, supportive of Ukraine. And they don't want to feel like we're justifying Vladimir Putin's actions, which I said, of course, none of us are even remotely attempting to do that. His actions should be condemned as aggression, and we should be educating people on the aggression by the West. If we're not pointing out everything that has led up to this, then we're doing a disservice by just waving the Ukrainian flag, because the logical conclusion of the whole Stand With Ukraine agenda is World War III. This is a proxy war, and we're essentially already economically in World War III. And I know that we're all terrified about that. And here in this room, the most contentious thing that we argue about is when and where to have our next meeting. And out there, on a day-to-day basis, I think that a lot of us are scared about us or our children or our neighbors' kids being sent into another war to die. And that's I think the biggest thing going on in the world right now. And I think we have to be very careful about how we do message on this topic, and not get in the weeds, and definitely not get into edgelording. And so the other thing that I wanted to share was that as we got into, as they started to express, look, we're concerned with some of the messaging coming out of the U.S. Libertarian Party. They explicitly, or they specifically named New Hampshire. And I know that I'm not alone in this room in my opinion, which I shared with them, that, well, first I explained the state affiliates of our National Libertarian Party, they operate independently, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And so they naturally each have their own approach, their own strategy, their own messaging, their own brand. And I also expressed to them that, many of us here feel that New Hampshire's social media activities have earned media of an unwanted variety. And basically, I let them know that they, in many of these cases, have been resistant and not very responsive to constructive feedback. So I'm just putting that all out there, and that's what I let these guys know. And what I also let them know is that we want to have a better quality conversation, don't want to be talking past each other, and just continually in these unproductive, Twitter flame wars. We want to have direct conversation, and again, productive conversation, where we can all leave more educated on the subject and figure out where we actually agree. Because what I told them was, look, our position is that we don't send billions of dollars that we don't have, that we're printing every day, to a proxy war. We don't send all these weapons. We certainly don't send our own troops, which now we've mobilized and sent to Poland. And that's hard line against our principles. So we're always going to advocate against that. And if standing with Ukraine means doing those things, then we don't stand with Ukraine. And I shared a meme with them that I don't think they very much appreciated. I think this, in my opinion, I thought that this pretty much encapsulated what our stance should be. And this is a really cool meme created by the Free Thought Project. And it basically, it's got these little emojis and it says, I do not stand with Russia. I do not stand with Ukraine. I do not stand with NATO. I do not stand with the UN. I stand with the people in each country who are held hostage by governments that start wars, destroy economies, and subjugate our lives. And we need to be very clear on that message. We need to do a better job of getting the point across, because if other libertarians, these are very well educated libertarians, they're very well versed in the philosophy and the tradition of thought in the libertarian movement. If their perception is reality, if their perception is that we're carrying water for the Kremlin, then we're messing up, and we need to take responsibility and do a better job of communicating. So I more or less have extended an invitation to set up more calls, and what we thought would be a great idea was to have a live stream, roundtable conversation, if you will, with some of our best messengers on the subject, and some libertarians from Ukraine, from Russia, and from some of these other countries that have been arguing that we're echoing Russian propaganda. And we'll hash it out, and we'll have a good quality conversation. I'm currently thinking about, who would be the best people to do that. We have a lot of talented folks. And just to throw out a couple names, I haven't run it by these people, but within the past month, a fella some of you might be familiar with, Clint Russell of Liberty Lockdown, he put out a really great episode on his podcast called The War They Wanted. And he pretty much lined out the whole history behind, NATO expansion, or, sort of like proposed NATO expansion into Ukraine, and regime change that we've been involved in there. And another person or two people that I'm curious about would be, Angela and I know them, Mark Perez and Brad Binkley of the Propaganda Report. And they do such a great job of deconstructing propaganda narratives, because this basically is all this is. It's a propaganda war. It's an information war, and our enemy, the cult of statism, they admit this, that it's really just about whoever's narrative is dominant and that people believe that's who's winning. And they want us to believe that we've got to pick a side, and the side that we have to pick is Ukraine, and we've got to send them all our money, go bankrupt, and then sign on to a new global central bank digital currency, and who knows what else. But yeah, that's where we're at. We're going to set up some discussions on this subject, and I feel it's really important to dial it in and not just, again, not get into the weeds, not succumb to just trying to be edgy, getting attention. Let's stick to our principles, stick to the platform, and let's also speak with our libertarian, libertarian allies around the world and work together. I know we want to coordinate our messaging because we agree on, really, we agree on peace. We agree on freedom. So that's what I have for you today. And I'm happy to take questions. Art?
I was surprised not to hear Dave Smith's name mentioned as a clarifier on Ukraine.
Oh, yeah, he might be okay. I don't know. I was thinking of other people that don't get as much attention. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
My comments didn't evolve into questions, it's more comments. And first of all, totally appreciate what you're doing. So I might have a little criticism, it's not about you, it's about what they said to you. I make that clear. That I totally, mad props to what you did. In one sense, though, I think we need to focus a lot more just on being anti-interventionist without even dealing with the names Russia and Ukraine. The Libertarian Party position is non-interventionist, and I don't think we highlight that much. We get too much in the weeds as the specific details of the situation rather than just the principle of non-interventionism. But I have to tell you, it's kind of like, I can call my sister ugly, but nobody else better call my sister ugly. I don't like that people from other countries are like having an opinion about New Hampshire. I'm telling you, that bothered me. We can have an opinion about New Hampshire, but let them mind their own. I'm sorry, that really rubbed me the wrong way, and I don't always like every single thing that comes out of a lot of the kind of affiliates. But I don't think, if other people are taking some of our messaging in a way we don't intend, yeah, that could mean we are failing, but it might not necessarily be. Because I can tell you, I've heard from a lot of libertarian organizations last term that, being against mandates makes you look like an anti-vaxxer. So just because somebody says, this makes you look one way, where I think we're being put to shame is I see Republicans and Democrats who aren't nearly as navel-gazing as we do and say stronger, sometimes libertarian things with no fear. Meanwhile, we're like, oh my God, they might not like us. Our philosophy in the larger world is prima facie edgelording. To the average Joe, our philosophy is extreme. And I think that word now has just become anything that makes our normie neighbor cringe a little now is edgelord. And I'm sorry, I think we need to get beyond that. We need to be our principles. We can't be an ass for the sake of being an ass. But I do not want the way we act and message to be determined by the international community. I just don't.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and I agree that it's like, it feels uncomfortable to be criticized by these outside people that are not as intimately involved. And the positive side to that I took from the call, which they very clearly stated as well, was that they are paying attention to what we're doing and what we're saying. We have influence in not just the national conversation, but the global conversation about peace and freedom. So they're very, very keenly interested in whatever weird stuff is going on with our internal politics and with our external messaging. That's Mr. Nick.
So as part of the comms team, I would just like to speak that we have, as far as foreign policy is concerned, or actually in a lot of policies, we have a strict rule to not echo the regime. So when everybody and their brother in the mainstream media and from the White House and every foreign organization and NGO is condemning Russia, we don't really contribute to the conversation by joining into that. So we are the American Libertarian Party. We need to look at the role of the American government in this foreign policy catastrophes that are the result of decades and decades of intervention. And so that's what we have focused on. And that's something that when we are ascendant in politics, something that we will be able to affect. We cannot, as an American political party, we cannot control or affect anything that Russia does. We cannot control or affect anything that Ukraine does, other than giving them a bunch of friggin' money, guns, and troops on the ground to die for them. So I reject this premise that we need to kowtow to their terms on how to message. I won't get behind that.
Thank you. I agree. And I would also say, to the extent that we do condemn, actual military aggression by Russia, we should do it in the sense of saying, wow, that is terrible. And here is why the United States and the European Union and NATO wanted this to happen. Now they're profiting off of it. Yes.
So I'll speak as a proud representative of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
We have very explicit, very strong anti-war messages. There are two in particular that I could repeat here, but I won't for sake of brevity. If they don't like them, we can double down and give them even stronger anti-war messages. And that's really the key. This is not about being edgy. This is about being explicit and direct. War is bad, people are dying. The words are not the issue, it's the deaths.
I'm sure that they would, or at least I'm optimistic that they would respond positively to that. What they didn't like, which they gave for example, was, a photo of Zelensky with a Hitler mustache. It's like, what is that doing to educate people on, what's been escalating these tensions? So, I mean, I'm all about it. I'm literally here to advocate for us doubling down on the anti-war and pro-peace message. So, thank you.
I want to provide just a little bit of a counterbalance so we can kind of look at this thing in the totality, right? They're literally physically closer to the war. Their feelings are going to be, they're more emotionally invested in this probably than we are. With the exception of anybody in here who's got anybody in their family who's in the military and having to deal with it. That's very close to home. On the other hand though, the left-leaning groups that Andrew and I have been working with, 100% on board with our messaging, and they're going just as hard. So there are people overseas who are upset about it, but I know that this LNC has people have been critical, thinking we would push away people on the left. We've actually like tremendous inroads, and our aggressive anti-war rhetoric is what's doing that. So it's working.
There's an organization in Massachusetts called Mass Peace Action, which is one of the most active anti-war organizations in the country. It's very, very left-leaning. I introduced them to some guy named Gordon. They went wild. They love Scott Gordon, okay?
Yeah.
Who knew, right? And Scott's pretty, I've heard he's opinionated. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I'd like to wrap up questions. Maybe Mr. Hagopian has our last question.
Just wanted to say thank you, and then also, I love the idea of bringing non-LNC, non-big name, kind of inside the party people to that discussion, so that it doesn't turn into what we just had. It should not be a discussion about LNC messaging. It should be a discussion about libertarian values, and I think that's what you're trying to bring to the table. That's what they want to bring to the table. We can all watch that discussion and then have internal discussions about how to use that information. But we should avoid what we just had on an international scale.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to see that. We don't want to get in an echo chamber, and we want to elevate our best voices, and oftentimes those are ones that are overlooked. So, all right, well, I'll leave it at that, but thank you very much. Feel free to call.
All right, thank you, Miguel, for taking on that very tricky position. Okay, so let's take a look, see what we got next. Up next, we're gonna have overview and budget process, I believe. Our agenda has been moved around a little bit, so I'm conferring with our secretary.
I have to pull back up the one note, but
All good.
I believe you're correct. For some reason, everything shut down, and yeah, I've got a whole collection of one notes.
Mini collections, that is literally her job.
Yeah. Let's see. I should look at one from 2019 and relive the past.
Oh, let's not.
Yeah.
Let's not say we did.
Yeah, please.
Housekeeping, adopted agenda. So,
But things got wiggled around, so.
we just finished the aisle.
Yeah.
So it's all this budget stuff in order.
Okay, so here's gonna be a question I ask, there's no right or wrong answer. Do we wanna do the overview and budget process, and then at that point, someone should move to go into executive session? Does that work, or should I entertain such a motion right now?
I'd love your opinion on this. I think it might be helpful for the whole body to hear the rough timeline. Or
Yeah, and I think, the overview, other than what I've already gone through, is probably 2 minutes.
Great. So why don't we do that, and then at a certain point, I will make that motion unless someone jumps the gun and beats me to it. So who would like to begin this part of our presentation for us?
Sure. So basically, the overview of the budget is as follows. So we are going to have our discussion today about the different categories that I've already outlined. I am listening, I'm taking notes, trying to figure out where the room is, what the competing interests are. And then I will be asking questions to try to get people to debate on those competing interests so that I can hear the consensus. From there, Lady, myself, potentially a couple other folks will get together and come up with the draft budget, which is based on my draft budget plus inputs from today. 2 weeks from now, theoretically around 2 weeks from now, I will submit a draft budget to the XCOM, which for those visiting is a subset of the LNC. The XCOM will review that draft budget and then submit it to the LNC for a vote in the early part of December. And then we will have approved it by the end of December, theoretically early December, but at least by the end of December. And that is the schedule that we've laid out.
The plan is to have an online meeting just to discuss the budget. Please don't dump a bunch of other stuff on the agenda once I post it, please. Probably December 10th or 11th. So I'm technically, maybe theoretically going into labor between November 25th and December 5th. So I should be good for a budget meeting within 5 days. But if I go into labor during the budget meeting, that will be hilarious. And I will actually stay on as long as I can because I am a clown.
I will move to table your legal.
We'll fundraise off. And we'll make, let's just make sure we fundraise off of it,
We
please.
should totally fundraise.
Yeah.
off.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
will
Right.
iron that
Right.
meeting date out afterwards online, but I'm just giving you all a rough timeline. And then we also need to have an executive committee meeting about that prior to that. So that is how this is gonna work. Okay, so real quick, ballot access committee budget presentation is probably not going to happen. We are probably just going to revisit and ask Mr. Nana a couple of questions. Affiliate support committee budget presentation, that's gonna be something that Lainey and I talk about and also ask Pat Ford his opinion on, and same with candidate support committee budget presentations. That stuff is gonna be related to staff and similar issues. But yeah, that's really about it, and I anticipate that we should be done on time. So before we start talking about talent, I am going to move that we go into executive session and keep our executive director in, with the caveat that we may want to pull staff in to facilitate answering any questions at a certain point, and that we'll do that on an as-needed basis. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Second.
Yeehaw, all right. Okay, any objections? Oh, yes.
I think that we want the executive director certainly for probably the majority of it. There may come a point in time where we want to have discussions just as a board.
Sure,
I just want to make sure that there's going to be an opportunity to do that.
that is totally fine. Okay. Any objections? Once, twice. Okay.
No, it's not an objection. It's all the,